Before we dive into this wild story of HOA chaos and helicopter-level payback, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when Karen tries to mess with the wrong neighbor. You ever get that feeling when someone crosses a line they shouldn't have? Well, that's exactly how I felt when I saw the bright, yellow HOA violation notice taped to the side of my boat, the boat I'd spent years restoring with my dad. It wasn't just a boat. It was our project, our memory, and my pride sitting quietly in my driveway. Until Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, decided it ruined the neighborhood's aesthetic. That morning started like any other. I was washing the deck, humming along to some country music, when I noticed her walking down the street with her clipboard, sunglasses, and that infamous scowl. She stopped right in front of my driveway, snapped a few pictures, and said, "That thing doesn't belong here. You have 48 hours to remove it, or the HOA will." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. The notice claimed I was in violation of community standards because my boat was an eyesore, visible from the street. I pointed out that the HOA rules only prohibited unregistered vehicles. My boat was perfectly registered and licensed. But Karen didn't care about rules. She cared about control. By that evening, I had 3 more warning emails. 1 from her and 2 from the HOA board, which she conveniently chaired. My neighbors whispered about it. Some even laughed at the drama, but to me, it was serious. That boat wasn't just sitting there for show. I was planning to take it out that weekend for the annual lake festival. Then came the kicker. The HOA hired a towing company to remove the violation if I didn't comply. They were going to tow my boat. My boat! I called every board member, filed an appeal, and even showed them the bylaw section. But Karen had already rallied her little HOA army. Her response was smug and final. "Rules are rules. You can park it elsewhere, or we'll handle it for you." That's when something clicked in my head. If they wanted the boat gone, I'd make sure they'd never forget how it left. That night, as I stared at my boat under the floodlight, I came up with the craziest plan I'd ever thought of. Something bold, dramatic, and absolutely unforgettable. I wasn't going to tow my boat. I was going to airlift it out of there. The next morning, I woke up with a plan simmering in my chest. Karen thought the HOA had the power to make things disappear, but she'd never seen a departure staged like this. I wasn't trying to be reckless. I wanted to be smart, legal, and theatrical. The kind of exit that would settle the score without breaking the rules. First, I made a few calls. My cousin Danny runs a construction logistics outfit that sometimes coordinates aerial lifts. When I mentioned airlifting the boat, he chuckled, then asked the obvious questions about weight, permits, and safety. He didn't rule it out. Then he connected me with Rick, a helicopter pilot who specialized in precision load transfers for construction sites and film shoots. Rick listened, asked for measurements and weight specs, then said, "If the numbers check and we get clearance, that's doable." The word doable felt like permission. We spent the afternoon measuring the hull, calculating center of gravity, and sourcing certified slings. This wasn't a backyard stunt plotted over beer. It was a logistical operation that required professionals. Next, legalities. Danny and I walked down to the county office to confirm zoning and to file the required FAA notification for a temporary aerial worksite. We bought extra insurance, posted notices to avoid panic, and arranged for traffic control so the crew wouldn't cause a scene. I wasn't hiding anything. I wanted transparency so Karen's claims about danger couldn't stick. At the same time, I kept the HOA on a leash with careful replies. Each of Karen's emails got a calm, polite response noting we were coordinating a compliant removal. That only made her push harder in the public forum. She doubled down on her authority, oblivious to the real plan unfolding. A few neighbors were curious, so I invited a couple who I trusted to be present when the lift happened. They promised to keep it off social media until after. It mattered to me that the reveal felt intentional and not like an angry spectacle. This was a lesson in pride and ownership, not chaos. I also prepared a short, printed statement explaining the legality and purpose of the operation for curious, respectfully onlookers. As the day approached, I felt a strange mix of nerves and exhilaration. The helicopter crew ran simulations, tested the slings on an empty trailer, and mapped the approach path so the rotor's wash wouldn't damage anything. Rick sat me down and said, "We'll get it up safely, but follow directions exactly." When everything was in place, I slept like a kid before a big game. Adrenaline and anticipation in equal measure. I knew Karen would be stunned. More importantly, I knew the neighborhood would remember how I chose to leave. Bold, lawful, and unforgettable. The morning of the lift felt like the calm before a storm. Quiet, tense, and full of energy. The sun hadn't even risen yet when I stepped outside with a cup of coffee. My driveway looked ordinary, except for one extraordinary detail. A bright orange marking cone placed where the helicopter would hover. Today was the day Karen's eyesore would fly, literally. At 7 a.m., the rumble of a Bell 407 helicopter echoed in the distance. My heart raced. Rick and his crew arrived in 2 trucks loaded with gear. Heavy-duty straps, guide poles, and safety harnesses. Everything was by the book. They even had county permits taped to the side of their trailer, just in case anyone wanted to question it. By 8 a.m., neighbors began peeking through their curtains. You could almost feel the confusion spreading. People stepped out with phones in hand, filming as the rotor blades began to spin, whipping the air into a frenzy. And then, like clockwork, Karen appeared. Clipboard, sunglasses, that same judgmental stride. "What on earth is going on here?" she shouted over the noise. Rick, wearing his headset, calmly replied, "Authorized load lift, ma'am. Please stay behind the safety line." She turned to me, her voice shrill. "You can't do this! This is completely against HOA policy." I smiled and handed her a copy of the approved FAA permit. "Actually, Karen, it's within full compliance. You wanted it gone, so I'm removing it." Her jaw dropped. She looked from the document to the helicopter, her brain clearly trying to process what was happening. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The pilot gave a signal. The slings were secured. The rotors roared louder, and slowly, my boat began to rise. The ground vibrated as the hull lifted off the trailer, hovering gracefully above the driveway. The entire street stood in awe. The morning sun hit the chrome railing, making it gleam like something out of a movie. The cheers started small, then grew louder as neighbors began clapping, laughing, and recording the whole thing. Karen, meanwhile, stood frozen, her clipboard pressed to her chest, as if it could protect her from the embarrassment. One of the neighbors whispered, "Guess she got what she asked for." The helicopter tilted slightly and started its ascent toward the nearby lake. My boat floated through the sky, dangling proudly like a banner of defiance. I couldn't help but grin, not out of spite but satisfaction. I had followed every rule, stayed within every regulation, and still made my point loud and clear. Karen wanted my boat gone. Now it was gone, in style. You could hear the helicopter's hum fading into the distance. But what followed on the ground was even louder, the collective laughter and disbelief of an entire neighborhood. Phones were still up, cameras rolling, neighbors cheering. Everyone had just witnessed the most unexpected HOA compliance in history, except for one person, Karen. The moment the boat cleared the rooftops, she exploded. Her face turned a shade of red I didn't think was possible. She stormed toward me, shouting over the fading rotor wash, "You humiliated this neighborhood! You humiliated me!" I stayed calm. "Actually, Karen, I just did what you asked. You said the boat couldn't stay, so I moved it, legally." She was trembling with fury. "You've made a mockery of the HOA. Everyone's laughing. This isn't how things are done here." A couple of neighbors started chuckling openly. One guy even called out, "Looks like someone's rulebook just flew away too." That only made her angrier. She turned on them, scolding anyone who dared to smile. Within an hour, she had sent out a community-wide email titled, "Gross Misconduct and Public Endangerment." It accused me of reckless behavior, public disturbance, and endangering neighborhood peace. The funny part? She attached a photo of my boat midair, which only made the spectacle look even more legendary. But she wasn't done. That evening, she called an emergency HOA board meeting at the clubhouse. I showed up, and because why not? Half the neighborhood did too. It was standing room only. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karen began with her usual tone, dramatic and commanding. "We have witnessed an egregious act that undermines the authority of this association." She pointed right at me. "We cannot allow this kind of behavior to set a precedent." Before I could reply, Mr. Daniels, one of the senior board members, raised his hand. "Karen, from what I've seen, he followed every rule. FAA permit, insurance, city clearance. He moved the boat exactly as requested. I don't see a violation." The room murmured in agreement. Even people who normally kept quiet were smiling. Karen's composure began to crack. She sputtered something about disrespect and decorum, but her voice trembled now. She knew the crowd wasn't with her anymore. Finally, Daniels looked around and said, "Frankly, Karen, I think we owe him a thank you for providing the most exciting thing this HOA has ever seen." The room erupted in laughter. Karen's glare could have melted steel. That night, the legend of the flying boat incident spread across social media. And for the first time ever, Karen's authority wasn't just questioned, it was deflated. By the next morning, the entire town had seen the video. My phone was blowing up, texts from friends, co-workers, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. "Dude, your boat went viral," one read. "You're the helicopter guy," said another. Local news outlets picked it up, calling it the most epic HOA showdown of the year. But the real story wasn't about fame, it was about freedom. Karen, on the other hand, wasn't taking the attention well. She'd lost control of the narrative, and worse, her so-called authority. By noon, an email from the HOA board hit everyone's inbox. It read, "Effective immediately. The HOA will review all enforcement procedures to ensure fairness and transparency in decision-making." Translation? Karen had been officially sidelined. Later that week, I bumped into her while walking the dog. She didn't have her clipboard this time. No sunglasses, no fake smile, just a quiet, uncomfortable silence. I nodded politely and said, "Morning." She gave a tight smile and muttered, "Nice weather." It was the first civil thing she'd ever said to me. Meanwhile, the neighborhood had changed. People started speaking up, questioning arbitrary rules, pushing for updates to old bylaws, and even organizing community events without HOA interference. For once, folks weren't afraid to challenge the board. My little stunt had turned into something bigger, a wake-up call. As for the boat, oh, it landed safely at my friend's lakeside property that same morning, right where I intended. The airlift went flawlessly, and Rick, the pilot, even framed a picture of it mid-flight for his office. I took my family out on the water that weekend, sun shining, laughter echoing, and the feeling of victory washing over me like the waves beneath the hull. At one point, as we cruised across the lake, my cousin Danny leaned over and said, "You realize you just set a new bar for HOA revenge, right?" I laughed. "Nah," I said. "I just followed the rules." Creatively, the viral clip kept circulating. Millions of views, endless memes, and even a few parody videos. One local YouTuber called it "the day a boat took flight," and a Karen came crashing down. But for me, it wasn't about humiliation. It was about standing your ground without breaking the law. About showing that sometimes the best way to fight control is with calm precision and a little bit of flair. So the next time someone tells you what you can't do, smile, read the rules carefully, and maybe, just maybe, let your boat fly.